Well, once again, it's time, my friends, for another meet and greet. We're Southern Fried and nationwide, so hang on to your seats. Look around, here's what I found. I guess you'll never know what you'll see on the Southern Fried Podcast Show. Yeehaw!
And good afternoon.
Howdy.
Robert, how are you today?
I'm beautiful, just like always, my normal clickbait self.
Well, I've done church today, and of course was really busy yesterday, trying to keep up with some of the political goings on. Elections, early voting for Georgia does start Tuesday. Monday's a holiday, and you said your wife was off because she works in a bank, so she gets the Monday off, and then we'll start early voting. I don't help until the third week of early voting, and then of course election day. But it's that crazy time of year, politics and all the campaigning, and of course on the national level, it's really heating up. And today we're blessed and honored and to have someone with us who's going to be on my ballot, and we're going to introduce him and just do a little bit of a kind of a coffee table talk with him today and learn some things about him and his, what they're working on in the House side of the Georgia, elections, or excuse me, in the representatives, and see what we can kind of get into. Rob, what do you think?
Sounds good. Sounds like a ball to me.
All right, and you see it on your screen, and we do have Representative Mitchell Horner, 3rd District, Georgia House of Representatives, and he's been kind enough to give some time today, and we appreciate him so much, and we're going to bring him up. Thank you so much, Mr. Horner, for coming on with us, and tell us a little bit about you. And you haven't always been a politician. I think you were elected in 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me today. And this is my second. I'm going into my second term, God willing. Election is, of course, this November. We're only 2 weeks away now. And so once I'm running unopposed, luckily. And so because of that, I'll most likely win as long as I vote for myself. And come January, that'll be my second term. Yes, sir.
I was just thinking as you said that, as if you vote for yourself, I can't imagine somebody going in and voting for somebody else. That would be a bad, like write in somebody. I'm not opposed, but I'm gonna write in somebody else. Politics can get rough. Sometimes politicians may feel like, oh man, you catch it from all sides. Tell us first of all, and thank you for that. And I know that you have a family and married. I think 2 kids. Is that correct?
I have 3 kids. Yes,
3
sir.
kids. Okay,
Wow.
I changed you there. Okay,
All girls.
All girls. Wrote checks I can no longer cash.
Oh man.
Bless your heart. I got a granddaughter.
They're 8, 7, and a year and a half.
Good
wow.
luck, sir. You're gonna need it.
You are a busy man.
Absolutely. They're wonderful. They're a handful.
We need to get your wife on here on Mama Said.
Yeah. We'll get the other side of the equation here,
Yeah, y'all might hear them if they get too rowdy downstairs.
That's okay. We don't mind.
Do.
Well, tell us about the district that you serve. How big is it? What area does it cover? Because honestly, I don't know that what that district is that you cover.
Absolutely. So there's 180 House members in the State House. Each of us cover about 60,000 people. But we try to stick to county lines. But of course, that just because there's only 159 counties. So
59, yeah.
Especially when you get around Fulton, there's like 60 representatives just from Fulton County. And so because of the population. So it's just population based. We try to draw it according to county lines. So mine's just Catoosa County. Mostly, there's 2 precincts outside my jurisdiction, which is the 2 in the Southwest, Chambers and West Side.
Okay. I thought it was mainly Catoosa, but I wasn't sure because honestly, as I was telling you before we came on the air, I've dealt more with the Senate side and the 53rd District, obviously, and a couple of others that I've sort of, talked to some senators and stuff and a bit of the Capitol. But I am looking to explore this side, and it is 2-year terms.
Yes, sir.
And we, basically, after you've gotten in, you're campaigning again, right?
Yes, every 2 years. Yes, sir. So we start, our session is January to March, roughly. It's a 3-month session. And so we won't start session until January. And then we'll be in for about 2 years. Then we're immediately running again. So it feels like it. It's a rush.
Yeah. Well, and of course, this time unopposed, but in the future, and be sure to come up anytime. We'd love to have you come back. And when you're
Absolutely,
and I know in session it's really hard, but always feel free to include us and send us messages or whatever things that are going on. And we definitely try to keep our listeners up to date on that. Robert covers the south of the state, and I try to cover the north.
wonderful.
And I guess we kind of meet. We don't really meet in the middle. We meet at the gnat line. So
it's more like a donut.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about Atlanta.
Well, nobody wants to go through Atlanta. My goodness.
Absolutely.
So the first time you were elected and you went to session, what was that like for having never done it before? And they call that making sausage down there. All that goes into making bills, and you're I guess they call you do they call you a freshman? What do they call you?
Fresh meat. So the first 2 years is your freshman class, I guess is the best way to put it. And it was very eye-opening. So I had gone in there thinking that it was going to be a little bit more of a fight because of the previous administration that had been in the State House. And then we had a whole new turnover when I was first elected. So we had a new speaker, we had a whole new leadership team. And so because of that, it really opened up a lot of doors, but at the same time provided a lot of new opportunities and a lot of new ways of communicating. So all the plans that we did have kind of just went to the side, and you're dealing with a whole new team, a whole new group of conversation just from the ground up. And so, and they're learning as well. So you're trying to learn while they're learning, and it was a very interesting time. But I'm glad that we did have that kind of switch over, because it was a breath of fresh air and for us new people, but also I believe for the leadership team. So it was a good little transition.
Yeah. And I believe that speaker is John Burns. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir. He's been a speaker. So we first elected him in 2022, and so he'll run for speakership again. This will be his second term as speaker. So
I did a little background on this because I wasn't sure, and the Republicans won the majority control of the House back in 2004, but that 2022 vote was 101 to 79.
Yes.
Not a huge number ahead, but that is quite a bit. I guess you could look at it like that.
Yeah, we kind of peaked around 2016, and then because the state is now slowly turning back purple, you're seeing our numbers start diminishing. So that's something that we are very concerned about with this election. Is right now we're at 101. We're projecting anywhere from losing 2 to 4 seats.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So yeah, so right now it's a very tough race in a lot of places around Atlanta. And so we're trying to do everything we can to help our colleagues, but the Republicans are slowly losing ground in the State House.
Well, wow. Atlanta keeps getting bigger, and they keep voting blue.
Exactly. Yes, sir. And so you're looking at, and that's our biggest fear is as soon as that State House goes blue, it's going to be very hard to change it back. And so it's two different types of mentalities of who's going to decide kind of the leadership of the state in the State House. And there's the moderate wing of the Republicans who's like, well, if we can get along with both sides, then maybe we can, pull more people to the center. And then there's more people like myself who think that if we stand on strong conservative values, we'll win our base back and get much more votes to that voting booth. So that's kind of where the State House is right now, to say with that 100 swing, we only have, again, it's 180 seats. So it's a 91 seats to pass anything. And so that's only a 9 vote difference. And so if we do go down 2, 4, 6 votes, depending on how bad the election could be or is, we could be seeing everything hinge on 5 to 6 votes, which for small members like myself, that's everything, because that means we can collectivize our vote and see how we can change things.
That's amazing. So in your first term, was you on any bills? Well, I guess let me ask this, because I don't know, because I'm more on the Senate side of study. And I'm assuming it's the same or similar. Like on for our senator up here, which was for me is Colton Moore, but he's on certain committees. Do you get on committees as well as members of the House of Representatives?
Yes, so we have committees as well. So a funny story about committees is, so with 100 seat majority, we need roughly 50 votes to be on a leadership, right? To be in leadership, you have to have at least 50 plus 1 to hold a leadership position. So they have 52 committees, just enough to where they can promise all what they need to do to win leadership. And so we have 52 committees in the House. I'm on a small business development. I'm on budget and fiscal oversight as a secretary. I did get leadership on that committee for my first term, and then as well as intergovernmental relations. So I'm on 3 small committees.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I guess they would say paying your dues, you kind of move up.
Exactly.
And so did you get on any bills that were voted in or were considered? Were
Absolutely.
you a part of any of those? So that's pretty good for first term. If you did that, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes and no. So how I kind of work is I take Reagan's principle, which is I'd rather get it done than have my name stapled all over the top.
Sure.
So the first term, I presented some bills and they didn't go anywhere. They barely even got a discussion. The second year, I went in with a much slimmer list, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do for my district. I had one thing that I wanted to do for the district, which was more transportation funding for our school buses, and then was a statewide bill for allowing a 1% sales tax to offset property taxes, because in Catoosa County, we bring in so much sales that with 1% of proper management of a sales tax, we can offset our property taxes on the county and city side. And so I went in trying to change those kind of laws. And luckily, the chairman of Ways and Means, Shaw Blackman, he sat down with me. We worked it through for about a couple of months. And he was very interested in the idea of kind of cleaning up the sales tax that we have in the state. And so we looked at that. We worked on that for a couple of months. The county commissioners up here really wanted it at the time. And so we worked very hard on the state level to get that passed. It came in a morphed way, which is House Bill 581, which is what will be on the ballot in November, which y'all will be voting on. It's ballot question number 1, and we can go through that a little more in detail in a minute.
Yeah.
But yes, I was on the first draft of that bill. I drafted that bill, and then sine die, they took my name off of it because they were, at the final day, they kind of switch everything around. So it's a yes and a no. You can see the first draft on my web page, but then at the same time, the final bill does not have my name on it. So yes and no. It got through. So that's all I care about. We got it done.
That's right. It does take help. You have to have, you can't go to the Capitol and do it by yourself. You have to have people pulling with you. And of course, another thing, I know it frustrates people, but it's just the way, I guess you could say it's the way things are done, making sausage, as they call it, is things attached to bills. Did this bill sort of survive on its own, or did it have other things that got attached to it at the, sort of in the back of the bill?
Absolutely. So yes, again, it's not a simple yes and no. It's like yes and no. So the original bill stayed the same. Another bill got attached to it at the end of it. And so it became 2 bills in one, which is why the ballot question is so confusing, because it's a Senate bill and a House bill all attached in one bill.
I got you. I got you. Interesting. Before we talk about those, I have to know, because I've been to the Capitol, I guess 3 or 4 times, I guess, for on the Senate side, and the 53rd District Senator has a pretty good office. Do you get an office down there too, and a staff there, or no? I don't know how that works for you guys.
We get a secretary that's shared by about 8 House members.
Okay.
And we get our own little office, but it's about half the size of state senators.
I wondered about that, because there's more of you,
Yes.
And the building is only so big, so.
And they're doing a full renovation of the Capitol too. So in the next 2 to 4 years, it'll look entirely different.
Oh, wow.
I think I do remember that now, that they were doing that. Also, I wanted to ask, I know on the Senate side, it's very historic in there. They made the carpet like it was, I know it looks just like it did 150 years ago. You got the old desk. Is the House chamber, is it kind of based on things from older times, or is it more modern?
Sir. No, it's 130 years old, if I remember right. It's from 1880. And they keep everything pretty standard, just like it's basically like the Senate chamber, except with 180 desks versus 50.
Robert, put that picture up real quick while we're talking about this, if you don't mind. It's on the overlays. And I did grab a picture, but I've never been in there. I'm gonna have to visit that side and just see. It's a beautiful chamber, and I know we're not down there for looks, but you have a nice place to work. That's a beautiful
Absolutely.
room.
I love the room. I love the atmosphere, especially when you get on sine die and the last bills and you're sitting back there and negotiating how to get things done. I love it. I love the atmosphere. I love doing the people's work.
So if we're looking at that room right there, where is your seat, or about where?
If you're looking at the room, it's because of how they do the panorama view. You can't actually see the desk, but it's next to the left fireplace, 3 seats in.
Okay. That gives us an idea.
Yeah.
Now, on your desk, is it like the Senate where you have the buttons that are on the desk so you can vote from right there?
Yes, sir. You have 3 buttons on your desk. One's a vote yes, one's a vote no, and speak. And four buttons. And then the fourth is if you were absent and you want to put your button down to walk off the chamber floor.
Okay. And also the last question I have on that, is there a gallery upstairs, or
yes, sir.
Citizens can come and just sit and watch the proceedings?
Yes, sir. So there's an excellent way to think about it. The governor's on the first floor of the building. That the people is above them, with the people's house, and then the people are above the people's representatives. So you have the gallery, the chamber, and then the governor's office.
So if you're standing inside the governor's office, which I've been blessed to be in there a couple of times, so it's right above that?
Yes, sir.
Directly
Our
above
chamber's
that.
right above it. Yes, sir.
I did not know that. Okay. And I've seen so many groups come down there when you come out of the governor's office there, and that beautiful staircase that goes up that so many people take pictures on and everything. It's right in that general area right there. I guess there is on every level, but it seems as though that's a place where a lot of groups, tour groups, schools, churches, whatever they are, that come in to do a visit, they will take pictures right there.
Yes.
So, Rob, it's really beautiful. I mean, it is a beautiful place, and they've worked hard to restore it and to keep it up. And like you said, they're doing more. I haven't seen any of the renovations. There's a lot of statues around, right? If I remember right, inside and outside. And so it just has a lot of history to it. So even if you weren't interested in politics at all, just walking around the inside and outside of the Capitol is really interesting. It's really, the only thing that's bad about going to the Capitol, one, it's in Atlanta.
Yes.
You got to deal with Atlanta traffic, and the parking is not, you're not just pulling up and parking at the Capitol. You got to park. Usually you're going to park and come in a parking deck and come across the street there, one of the elevated walkways.
Plus, it's like $40 of parking because it's Atlanta, so it's rough sometimes.
But you get pretty decent parking.
Yeah, the legislators get their own parking, luckily.
Well, they should.
Because I drive every day, so I don't stay in Atlanta during session. I can't stand Atlanta, so I drive back home every night, and so.
Oh wow!
So if we were to go there, well, we wouldn't necessarily want to do it. If we could go there on a day when you weren't there, could we park in your place?
Oh, security's not going to let you do that.
For sure, I don't mind.
We can try.
I was blessed as clergy to come in once and address the Senate, and when they did that, I didn't realize you get special parking.
Oh, wonderful!
So there is a couple of spots, I guess one for each for the House and the Senate, and it's marked clergy. And they just really treat you, awesome. And when I got done, you get about 10 minutes, which there's a lot going on. You can't take forever, but
yes,
they were real nice to come down, and many of them, and shake my hand and greet me and everything. So there's, it is politics. So when they're debating a bill, it can get hard. You said they want to speak. Now in your bill, did you have to address the chamber?
I didn't have to address the chamber. I had to address the committee.
Okay.
So I took some committee time, but the chairman, because it became a chairman's bill, which is why I was more than happy of him taking and running with that football. And so he addressed the chamber.
Yeah, it's intimidating when you're standing up there and facing all those folks, and you have the gallery. It's and you've got people behind you and everything. I will tell you funny real quick, and then we'll for Robert, you've got a question before we go into these bills because we're voting on, because that's I really want to get to that. But we went down, a friend of mine, and the sender knew we were coming, which was a good thing, because my friend went down. We went in to do the scan. You put all your valuables and stuff, and it goes through the scanner. He brought in a knife. He just throwed it all down in there, and it got in that scanner. And I think it's the Georgia State Patrol, or they have their own Capitol Police. Georgia State Patrol.
Yeah, Georgia State Patrol.
This guy come around the corner. I mean, he was barking like, "Who left? Whose knife is that?" You know. And I'm putting my hands up like I didn't do nothing, and they are not happy. And my buddy goes, "Oh yeah, that's mine. I forgot that." And they were. I thought we were going to get arrested. And the senator was coming down the steps, which is a good thing. And he smoothed everything out. Yeah. He probably said, "Hey, look, these are a couple old country boys over here. They don't know any better. You got to overlook them, you know." But they were not happy with us. And I told my friend, I said, "Man, thanks a lot." now we look like criminals.
Please tell me that was Cook.
It won't be Cook. It's a guy I used to work with. Okay. But I thought, man, I look like a criminal now coming down here. You know, I said I could see that being on the Atlanta news. Georgia pastor gets arrested for, you know, him and co-conspirator bringing a knife into the Capitol or something. You know,
oh, I'm sure the AJC would love that one.
Oh, I know. My gosh, you know, North Georgia country bumpkin preacher tries to bring a knife in. It wasn't even my knife, but they let him, and believe it or not, they let him put it on, you know, there's bricks, or there was on the outside. They let him put that knife up there. He said, either you throw it away or you put it outside. So he set it up there, and he said, that'll never be out there when I come back. But it was. Nobody bothered it. And he picked up his knife, and we went home. And I told him all the way home, I said, dude, don't ever do that again. I mean, come on. I mean, there's all this security and everything. Which, you know, for everybody's sake, I'm glad they have that kind of security. We don't need, you know, people that, you know, sometimes you just get people that are angry or mental or whatever, and you have to be protected. You know, people are not happy, and politics is so dividing right now. I mean, there's so much anger and angst against politicians and stuff. So, Rob, you got anything before we talk about these bills? Because I want to understand them things.
I know. I want him to talk about them.
So,
look, I'm from Miller County.
Go ahead.
We got little Miller County down here. We got 6,000 population. I don't know who my rep is right off the top of my head. But, I mean, come on. We don't have too many issues down here. As long as we get rain and we get the crops in and out and we can dodge a hurricane or two, we're good to go.
Those South Georgia boys are something else.
Amen.
Well, we got some goodness down here.
We get a lot of good Georgia football players from South Georgia, you know. So
that's your wrestlers.
Yeah. Tell us about yours then. It's going to be on the ballot. If people pull up their sample ballot, it's going to be on everybody's sample ballot that they can pull up and look at right now. Correct? Because it's statewide. This bill
so it's ballot question number 1. And so basically, I'll go into the history real quick of it. So in Catoosa County, that was kind of where I was trying to get an allowance of where we can do a 1% sales tax to offset our property taxes completely and utterly. And so it kind of came from that bill. The Senate side wanted to do what's called a floating homestead exemption. And so what this is, it's a basically in Catoosa County, we are seeing property taxes and property appraisals going up 30% just this year on the school side. It's a giant jump. People are really feeling the pinch, especially since we're having Biden inflation. We're having other issues that are really coming across where people's budgets are really strapped. And a 30% tax increase on your home is not something that we want to see in any way, shape, or form. I stand utterly opposed to it. But that being said, it came because in Catoosa County, we weren't properly appraising our values for 2 years. And so these jumps happened. The first year is 20%. Now it's 30%. So overall, it's almost a 50% jump. And so we began looking at that law and saying, we have to do something that protects the homeowners from values from jumping up so quickly. So that's what's called a floating homestead exemption. It's where your home value is stuck at the rate of inflation. And so if you go and buy a house, say for $200,000, right now it would jump up to $260,000 because of the new appraisals that just hit it. It went into effect. Right. And the market isn't really reflecting that. And so, so then what's the problem is we were like, no, we don't want this to happen again. So now you're going to get where it can only go up with inflation 7-8%, depending on inflation of that year. And so now it's only, $210,000 on a worst day. And so your taxes are now capped. It's a cap to a certain percentage, depending on inflation. And so it doesn't grow so quickly on your home. It's just for your homestead. That's why it's called a homestead exemption, your home. And so on the ballot, it's a ballot question giving the authority for the state house and the state senate to have this authority to pass this. And we have to have it constitutionally. So the people have to vote on it to say, y'all can have the power to have this on the books. So if the people vote for it come November, it'll be immediately placed on the books. It's a floating homestead exemption that takes effect next year. And so your home values are stuck at this year's value plus inflation every year. So that way it protects your home from value from going up. And then it also allows other things to happen on the backside. So local counties and local jurisdictions can decide to opt out if they want to after that vote. So November, y'all are just voting for the homestead exemption. And then January 1st, if it passes, and I hope it passes, I believe it will pass because, again, it's just protecting homeowners' property values from going up too quickly. It doesn't affect you if the property goes down. It doesn't affect you if it stays the same. It just affects you if it goes up too quickly. So in January, local jurisdictions can decide if they want to opt out or not. They have 2 months to decide to opt out. If they do to opt out on this statewide local homestead exemption, then they have to go through what's basically a tax increase. They have to declare it to the public. They have to do their 3 hearings, and then they have to explain why they want your property to increase more than the rate of inflation.
Okay.
And if they decide not to opt out, then the cities and the county can decide to do a 1% flexible local option penny sales tax, a FLOST, for a 1% sales tax that only goes to offsetting property taxes. So it's a complete $1 for $1. And so in Tues County, it's a very beneficial thing because we have such a high influx of sales because we're right on I-75 that it would completely offset our city and county our property taxes and would diminish the property, the taxes that my local constituents are facing. And so that's why I wanted it in Tues County, why I think we can have it in Tues County. But I believe that the floating homestead exemption is something that a lot of other counties definitely wanted it. I know three counties up here that's already looking at completely supporting it and doing something like that. So I think it has a lot of support statewide as well. So we'll see how November goes. If that helps explain it.
Do you find that it's supported in Catoosa, the people you've talked to? Just, I know people don't tell you how they're going to vote, but do you feel like it's something that people have been positive towards as you've talked to not only elected officials, but constituents? How do they feel about it?
Absolutely. I see a lot of grassroots support. So I don't have a contender in November elections. So I've been door knocking for the homestead exemption, just explaining to my constituents what we did, what we passed, because it is a very complicated bill. I'm trying to summarize it best I can. But I've been going door to door, just explaining it to the constituents, saying all it's doing is trying to protect your home from going up too fast. Again, in Tues County, we experienced a school property tax go up at 30%. And so this school tax really drove a lot of people, made a lot of people very angry naturally, because your taxes are increasing so fast that they can't afford it. And so it's hurting the elderly, it's hurting people with fixed incomes. And we're trying to find solutions that can solve that to the homeowner. Again, this doesn't affect commercial buildings. It doesn't affect commercial residential properties. It just affects your one property, which is your home. And so that's as a state legislature, it's our job to check and balance even local officials at times. And so we want to make sure that we have the protection of our homeowners, but at the same time allow the county or the schools to increase taxation if they see fit. But that's on them, not on the state.
Right.
So if they go and they decide to raise property taxes, if they don't want to support this and they go and raise property taxes, they have to put out there that, hey, we're raising property taxes. And I bet you it's going to affect more than just a home.
Exactly.
And we've got a lot of farmers down here that have some acreage. And you start getting property tax on that starts adding up quick on. And there's enough struggles going on with farmers. I hope they don't even think about that.
Yeah, and that's exactly. And that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to just protect the homeowner. And that's what this bill does, is it just protects your homeowner value from going up too quickly. And so that's what we're seeing a lot across the state, because of all these other different reasons. Taxes are in general are just rising very quickly on the local level, and we're trying to say, hold the brakes, because I'm a fiscal conservative. So what that means to me is we're not here to grow government. We're here to keep it at the base level. But with these new taxes, they are growing the local government. And so it's my job to check and balance our local systems.
Now on that wording on the ballot. So if somebody, and by the way, to our voters, you can carry the sample ballot into the voting booth. You can print that off. You can't use your phone at all in the precinct. Voters can't do that. So, but you can carry this ballot in there, sample ballot, and you can pre-mark it, so you don't have to think too much, like get confused in the wording. So does it say, if you're voting for it, how does it word that? Does it say,
if I remember right, you're approving this a change in the state constitution to give the authority to the state to do a homestead exemption. Okay. Because we've already passed the bill, and so the bill dies if the people don't give us that authority. And so because of how the bill is written, is as soon as you vote on that bill, it will become law. And then January, they can opt out if they decide to or not. But as soon as the people vote for approval, it goes on the books.
Okay. I had my sample ballot pulled up. That's why I was asking if you remember. Because sometimes people get confused. And I've seen voters say, does this mean I'm for it or against it if I say this? Because they get confused on that. So
and luckily, if you support having your home properties capped at a certain rate, then it's a yes vote. If you don't, it's a no vote. And it's all we're voting on, because I know there's a lot of complexities behind the bill. And they're like, well, what about the 1% sales tax? You're not voting for the 1% sales tax yet. You're just voting for the exemption.
Got you. Well, that clarifies.
Exactly. And so you're just voting on allowing locals to have that exemption power.
Well, I appreciate that. Now there's two more on there, two more questions that we're voting on.
Second one. I know where I'm voting on that.
So the second one is a tax court. So this one was a little more. I have a little more issue personally with it on the bill, because one, it's tax court. It's a new type of court. And again, I'm not for expanding any type of government, especially a tax court. But that being said, is we already have these administrative courts. They're already in our system. We already have a tax court. In Atlanta, we have local tax courts that have administrative powers. But because they're administrative courts, you don't have the same appeals or rights as individual and superior court. So what you're doing is voting to have the same, to basically say this tax court is now basically like a superior court, and that you have the same rights as if you went in front of the superior court judge, but at the same time that the appeals process will change, and it'll give you a little more ease of access to the appeals process. But again, you are increasing the powers of the court when tax court. You're basically taking that power from the superior court and creating this new court. It did pass unanimously in the House, because there was 2 members, myself included, that was like, this is sounding really good, but it's going to the people, so we'll let the people decide on this authority. So that's why we decided to do a unanimous vote on that one. So It could be either or. I haven't even made up my mind how I'm voting on the ballot question, but I'm letting the people decide on that one.
I am very leery of giving anybody authority, especially in a court system. I've been fighting for my disability now for going on 8 years.
Yes.
And the last time it went in front of a judge, she said that, well, you meet the qualifications, but I'm denying it. So I meet the qualifications. I'm disabled. I have epilepsy. I'm stuck. But still, she denied it anyway. My attorney was furious. But why? If she doesn't believe people can be disabled, she shouldn't be the judge. And in this case, if you don't believe that people can have a tax thing that need to be appealed, you shouldn't be the judge. Judges have a lot of power, but there's no real checks and balances on them.
And people forget it's a whole separate branch of government. And so there is checks and balances the legislature can do. And that comes with, again, if we have the authority to do a tax court, and that's how are we going to set up a tax court? That's a whole nother discussion once they pass the bill. But most likely they'll set it up as we're being told, like a superior court, which again, I still have issue with on how they're going to set it up like that. So yes, there are issues with that. And to be frank, I'm not completely 100% on either or, but it's up to people to decide if they want to have an additional tax court. And because we do have other courts that we set up that are similar, like a drug court or other jurisdictions that have fallen under the superior court. But the appeals process right now goes tax court, superior court, then the appeals court. So their whole reason they want to do this is clear up the appeals process and go from tax court to appeals court. And so, again, there's pros and cons for just that argument alone, because now you're not going in front of a superior court judge who has a whole different set of qualifications than that tax court judge. And so, and on top of that, you're looking at changing a tax court judge. What's their qualifications going to be? Are we going to allow CPAs to be the tax court judge? And so there's all sorts of different things that's going to go even just into that qualification. And then are they going to be elected position? Or are they not going to be elected position? So you're looking at a whole another type of Pandora's box once you get that to the ballot. So
just the whole idea of that phrase, tax court.
Yes, sir.
That kind of shot it down.
That's why we were like, whoa. But unfortunately, we already have them. They're already administrative courts. It's just, again, you do not have the same type of rights as being in front of a superior court judge too. Right. So you can't enter the same type of evidence. So there's all sorts of different things. That is a problem. It's just, again, checks and balances and decisions.
Yeah.
Now, your county tax commissioner, they set your tax rate, correct?
No, they just collect the taxes.
They just collect the taxes.
The local board of commissioners set the millage rate.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course they catch a lot of heat. Now up here, I think our commissioners, I think there's a change coming. I think one or two of those seats changed for this next term, if I remember right.
Yeah, there's a big backlash on, again, raising taxes. I mean, we're looking at our third year where the county and local officials have raised our millage rates and the appraisal values. So it's really hurt a lot of people up here. You know,
the county next to us went through a lot of problems because they had some big debt and people are very upset with all the money. But now they were saying we need to go to Catoosa County. Now those same people are saying, I'm glad I'm in this county and not Catoosa County. Yep. I mean, it's not pretty right now. It's pretty ugly. You know, you hear a lot about that in church.
Exactly. And that's why I ran, is because I fundamentally believe we do have to make, unfortunately, some changes in Catoosa County, but changes to where we preserve what we have so that my kids grow up in the county I grew up in. And so those are hard choices and hard decisions. And I haven't seen the local officials yet be able to say we're making these changes and doing that. Right now, they're just raising taxes, and that's not solving the fundamental problems underneath. Right. That's just kicking the can to, one, the taxpayer, or two, we heard this a lot where the school board had a big deficit. And the reason they had this deficit was because they didn't want to pass the money on to the taxpayer. And I was like, I wonder if that's the Fed's excuse, is saying, well, we have this massive deficit, not because we don't want to cut spending, but because we don't really want to tax you more. Where at the end of the day, you're still paying for it. That's still going in. That's still affecting your surplus cash or your bond payments. I mean, it's a very controversial issue.
Yeah, no doubt.
And it's frustrating to see that there's very little effort to move the ball a little bit downfield to where we can say we're creating a sustainable county. We're not to that point of sustainability yet. And so you're going to see these taxes increase if we don't start solving these problems.
Right.
That's a great point. All right. The number three question on the ballot. What does that cover? What is that about?
I think I'm voting yes on this.
Yeah, that's just increasing the exemption. Again, another type of property for tangible goods property. Tax exemption right now, it's $7,500. So you're just increasing that limit from $7,500 to $20,000. So it lowers your taxes, basically. It's just a tax deduction on statewide level. So I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be a big problem. Certainly in our area. I mean, people are always going to be about that,
Exactly.
About having that. So pretty easy there.
Yeah. So I live in a double wide. It's a nice double wide. I bought
Yes,
it
sir.
new. So this will get me a $20,000 exemption on that too, right?
I believe so. And I
Yeah,
don't quote me on that, but I believe so.
I think so. So that's substantial. You
Exactly.
know,
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to offset a lot of these costs that we're seeing just pile up because there's hard decisions coming, even on state level, that we have to decide how to spend the taxpayers' money effectively and efficiently. That's my area of expertise is budgets. I have a little coffee mug that's all about spreadsheets. They call me the spreadsheet kid down there because I just have spreadsheets everywhere. And I'm like, guys, we even on state level we have problems, but on especially in Tues County, we have a lot of local issues where we're not really saying how are we solving these problems. We're just letting them pile up and kind of pushing them down the road. And so that's kind of been my area of focus is how can we start addressing these issues step by step. And property taxes to me is it's a tax of rent versus a tax versus other taxes. It's very antiquated. Right. There's a lot of biasness and bureaucracy that goes on to having a property tax. And so I just think it's an outdated mode of taxation that we need to move away from because it's just so burdensome to especially the low income individuals or fixed income individuals.
Fixed income, yeah. Those people are really, really struggling right now.
Yeah, and that's something that I would love to see in the next session. Something that we're working on locally is we're looking at how we can change the age exemptions right now in Catoosa County and lower them. Because we have to make some changes. Because right now in Catoosa County, you have to be 75 before you get a school tax exemption. But Social Security starts at 67. Or if you take early at Social Security, you're on a fixed income even longer. So we have to start moving that dial back to protect the people that deserve it because they've lived in this county for years, while at the same time they've paid property taxes for years.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's something we're looking at doing. We're looking at trying to make sure that we have, again, more checks and balances to protect the taxpayer and the constituent from these hard choices. Something I would love to see on a statewide level is anytime there's a tax over 10%, it goes to the people. Let the people decide if it's truly necessary. Let the people decide on a 10% tax increase.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
One of the reasons when you first ran and I did vote for you was because when you came on, I mean, you were asking these type of questions right off the bat. I mean, you had that. I hope it's not wrong to say this, but almost that Ross Perot kind of campaign where you're questioning the money. You wanted. You sounded business-like. You were trying to bring some common sense business examples to that. And I remember watching you on a local channel, and you, they came at you a little bit, about some of it, but you stood your ground and refused to back off of that. And I respected that because you were trying to bring a business sense to that about how the money is spent, where it's going, because people always have those questions. And yes, it's very expensive to run things, and it's very expensive to run a county. It certainly is. But that doesn't mean that we can't get smarter about how we're doing things. And I appreciate you having that.
No, and I appreciate you saying that because I believe in the services that we provide our county. Our schools are one of the top in the state, and I want to keep it that way. But I still see a lot of ways that we could then use those resources for protecting the teachers and salary increases and in school transportation. That's why I fought for more funding in school transportation, because I saw it wasn't a spending problem on that issue. It was a revenue problem from the state because the state wasn't paying their fair share. So there's absolutely imbalances from the state side, from the local side, and from the federal side. It's just at the end of the day, we have to still spend our money properly because we can't just keep asking people whose budgets are shrinking on a daily basis because of inflation, because of property taxes, because of other issues to say, hey, we need you to fork up more money because we're being wasteful with it. No, that's not our job, especially as Republicans. Something I see a lot is they're just so quickly to say, well, what do you expect us to do? Cut services? And we're Republicans. Our job is to cut services if we don't have the money to pay for them.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask you kind of a little bit harder question here?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I don't know if it'll be hard for you or not. One of the main things that I think is affecting everybody anymore, especially parents, is when they send their kids to school, and then we're having these issues with school shootings and such as that. Is there any way that we or that you could help make the schools more secure? Is there any bill passages?
So absolutely. There are, with the speaker, he's talking a lot of these issues because of the previous school shooting. It's a terrible tragedy that happened, and of course we don't want that to happen ever in the state. I have kids in the school system. It's a dread for every parent. That being said, I don't think we're dealing with the fundamental issues at hand. I mean, we have disciplinary issues in school that we're not addressing because of the laws that the state passed that basically say you cannot address discipline. And if you do, we're going to kind of penalize how you spend money. And you know how bureaucracy works. If you're penalizing their money, we're not going to report it. And so you have this disciplinary chain that's completely broken.
Right.
And so where the teacher doesn't really have the power to discipline. So I'm all for giving the teacher the power to discipline. I mean, it's their classroom, and if they need to keep order, it's just like any other civil protection. I mean, the judge has to keep order in his courtroom. Why can't the teacher keep order in her classroom? So discipline is one. Two, there's a lot of drugs in our schools. There's a lot of drug issues, even with other mental illnesses now popping up, that they've really started pushing the pill process. And we're not addressing that
You're absolutely correct.
that edge of mental illness. And lastly, we're not addressing the fundamental problem, which is the breakdown of our communities. As a pastor, you know, I would love to see more communities stepping up and saying, how can we get kids involved in making sure, you know, and I think I would love to see a community outreach program or a focus towards community a lot more, because we are moving from a state and a society that was very God focused to one that's not focused on God.
That's right.
And I do fear that these are the repercussions from those actions.
That's right.
And so that's kind of how I see the problem when it comes to school shooting. And I don't think that there's a lot of bills on the table that kind of address those fundamental problems, because right now they're saying they want to push a gun safe bill. And to me, it's not the gun, it's the mental issues that are behind the gun.
I agree with that.
And so I do believe we need a mental healthcare bill, but the way that they're looking at mental health is from a bureaucratic and a beds side of it. It's from how can we make sure this doesn't happen again, but they're looking at counselors, and it's been proven to where all these people that have had school shootings have had counseling beforehand or have been seen by psychologists and they hadn't caught it. Right. Or they've been flagged to the FBI and the FBI didn't do anything with it. And so and that's my fundamental problem is the more the state gets involved, the more we kind of tiptoe into disaster.
I'll just say, because I am in the county and I do have, you said you have children in the school system. I do too. And I know the work that goes on behind because I'm actually on one of the committees, and I hope to get back on it again, that meets and they go to the different schools and they talk about issues and stuff. And it's been great, but there's, without a doubt, there's a problem. And I know many parents that are their kid, and I know middle school's hard, but it's a time of change for children as they're starting to become a young adult and teenager and all those things. But it's a mess right now to me. And a lot of parents that I talk to are concerned about it. And many of them have considered taking their children out, at least going to the online school portion. That's what is still a part of the school, or homeschooling or something else. I have 2 children that are out of the school system. They're homeschooled now. And it's happening more and more. We're going to have a pastor on that's going to talk. It's a different county, but it's close to us. He's going to talk about his hard decisions he made for his child, and he pulled them out. They've got problems, and the bullying. Of course, many school systems deal with that. But it is going on, and there's just issues. And I'm not going to ask you to comment on this. And Robert, you may not be aware of it, but we have an exploding issue up here right now in a case that's involving a teacher that was arrested and a student, and that it's an ugly situation. The community is really falling in on this. On one side, you've got law enforcement on another side, and this teacher was arrested. And you can look this up, Robert. Just look. I don't want to.
I'm gonna look it up.
I don't want to have our representative have to comment, because it's an active case, and it's ugly, and it's getting uglier by the day. A lot of people are upset all over the place on this one, and I would just ask people to go research that. It's easy to find, but this situation is, it represents a lot of different issues that are going on, which is what you said. We have a deeper issue that's going on. It's not you can't legislate morality.
Exactly.
You can't do that.
And
that's the whole idea with removing guns. You just can't legislate right and wrong. That has to come from a deeper level.
Exactly. And I always love old debates, and I'm a political nerd, so I love old 1960s, 1970s presidential debates. Yeah. And if you're listening to them, they're having the same problems that we have now. Yeah. They had the same issues with the school system that they had then that we have now. And so a lot of the things that we've tried to legislate, I mean, No Child Left Behind, anything that we try to touch, I promise you, it really doesn't get better. That's why I'm a small government conservative, is because I believe that people can solve the problems, not the state. And it's my job to make sure that the resources that we're putting towards public school, we also have towards individuals that want to go to homeschooling or other choices. We need to open up our capability of choice, because I believe in individualism. I believe everybody can make their own way. And it's just my job to make sure that if we're providing resources for one person to have their way, why can we not provide resources for someone else having their choice of way?
I speak this from my own self. I heard this was my own ears. I had concerns. I'm raising a granddaughter, and she went into the middle school, and I won't name the school, but I asked the question, but I said, because she said, is your granddaughter excited about school starting? And I said, well, she's a little bit concerned, and because of the bullying issue, and the kids had all heard that when you get to middle school, there's going to be bullying, and it's just a different environment. They come out of elementary school, and the teacher, the administrator, basically told me, he said, well, we got bullying. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't be everywhere all at the same time. So we do the best we can. I said, that's not the answer I wanted to hear.
And that's really what I'm saying on local levels around here is they're like, well, we're doing the best we can. And at a point, that's not good enough anymore. If you're asking for a 30% tax increase on your paycheck and you're saying, I'm doing everything I can you pay me more? It's not. Yeah. And then you don't have any new plan to change those things. That's where I have those concerns and efficiency. I'm like, whoa, we need to step back and let's look at the fundamentals of the problem. And so when we're asking for legislation on these issues, a lot of people were like, oh, absolutely, we need a mental health bill. But the problem is they get their hands in it and it tweaks it to such a monstrosity that it doesn't help anybody and causes more bureaucratic rings to go through. And then they're like, well, how dare you vote against a mental health bill? It's like, I'm all for mental health reform. It's just, I believe it stands on the individual, on the community, on your faith. And I don't think you can legislate that.
Well, I agree with your answers, and I liked your answers to that. And I agree with them 100%, because there is definitely a fall off in our community and our homes. That has definitely been proven. Everybody sees it. The absence of so many fathers in the homes now, it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things I was asking about, how hard would it be to put a metal detector at the entrances and exits? They have them in every courthouse.
Yep. And that's something that we're looking at. Something else we're looking at is there's an automated security cameras now that can kind of pick up any type of firearm or any type of kind of device on you. So we're looking at those kind of things. I think you'll probably most likely start seeing those put in place, or at least resources to allow locals to put that in place. Something a lot of people don't realize that we already have on the books is, on the books in the state of Georgia, we actually allow teachers to carry in the classroom if the superintendent or the local school system decides to do that. But almost no county has taken up the choice to actually do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just simply saying that's a tool that they have on hand.
Yeah.
And so there's all these different things that we have on the books that we're not using, while at the same time, I definitely think we need to relook at how we're doing education. The other thing I ran on was education, because my kids are in the school system, and I was like, I would love to see these things change since I'm in there. And bullying is absolutely an issue in our area. And then our testing, our grades on schools right now, they have a 41% proficiency standard. And that means they're failing 59% as kids. And I quote, they said, well, we're better than the rest of the state of Georgia by like 2%. I'm like, the whole state's failing. That's not a good thing. That's not going to your point of, well, I mean, we're doing the best we can. That's not the answer we're looking for. And so there are hard questions that we have to ask our elected officials, your representatives. What can we do? What are we doing? And unfortunately, I think it again comes down to just having that better building that community. That's why I'd love to see more building. How can religious officials in our area meet with state officials and local officials and say, how can we address this as a community? Because I think that's the answer. It's not from the state.
Yeah,
because we're not smart enough to deal with that issue.
Yeah. There's some good things that are going on, but I will say this, and I can only speak for my county, and I love everybody. And there's some great people involved, and they're working hard. But I will say along with that, that when you bring up an issue, they get very defensive. They almost take it personal, and they think that you're questioning, their whole ability, and you're not doing anything. And that's not it. It's just, can we get better? Which is what you're saying. How can we get better? How can we push the can down the road? And I've felt that when I brought up school security. The first thing I heard out of their mouth is, "Hey, we're doing everything we're supposed to. Everything's good." I'll just tell you right now, because I had a couple of questions about it, which I don't want to mention on air because when we're talking about security, you have to be very careful with schools.
Yes.
But I saw a couple of issues. Now, if I'm seeing that, other people could see that. If I see it as an issue, others could see it as an opportunity. And that's what concerned me. I just wanted to see them close the loop a little bit.
Exactly.
It got very defensive and kind of shot it down. And no pun intended, but it was like, well, wait a minute now. I'll just tell you right now, we're doing everything the way we're supposed to. But the question is not that you're not doing anything. It's, can we get better?
No, you're absolutely right, because I have nothing but the utmost respect for teachers, because they are, in my opinion, underpaid in certain areas of they are.
Sure.
They are the crux of our society. Yet at the same time, they're getting criticized for anything they do outside the lines. And a teacher used to be able to have full independence in their classroom.
Sure.
And we've really moved away from that, where the state has so much authority, so much mandates, to where they don't really have any authority in that classroom. And I'm all for local control of that school system. The problem is we have to get better at the same time, because it's a top-heavy a problem again. Is what I see in Tues County is we have so many administrators and so many different types of issues on that administrative level that they're not willing to make the necessary even have the conversations to say what the changes are. Yeah, I've been in this position for 2 years, and I cannot get let's deal with what are the problems. All I'm asking is, these are my constituents' concerns, and they won't even sit down and say, let's go line item by line item, and what are those concerns?
Yeah, it is frustrating, and like I said, I think that everybody wants to be a partner in helping to make things better. Nobody's criticizing and saying we're not doing anything. Just how can we get better at what we do? And if we can't take that kind of feedback, then that says something in itself right there. I just have
take that to the Board of Education, to the actual Board of Education, have a meeting with them and say, "Hey, these people work for you.
Exactly.
Let's do this. What are the issues? What can I do to help you do better? Tell me." And sit down with that school board. And if they can't answer the questions, they don't need to be on the school board.
Yeah.
And I did. Opinion. Nope. And I have done that, and they said I was being too antagonistic.
Really? Did you go back a second time?
They haven't let me back yet.
Well, you're not being antagonistic enough.
I'll say he's ruffled a few feathers in the county, which I kind of like. Sometimes you got to shake things up a little bit.
Well, because again, I want everybody to be able to do their job the best way that they know how. I don't know how to do their job. I'm not here to tell you how to do your job. I'm just here to say we can do it better. And you're exactly right. Is we can do it better. We keep moving away from even having the conversations to say, how can we do it better?
And that's the problem.
Board, is that elected or appointed in Georgia?
It's elected. Each county is elected under their own rules.
Okay.
And sadly, Robert, probably most people don't know who their school board is.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but it's probably true.
If the reps are trying to meet with the school board, the school boards won't meet with them to try to fix some of these issues and have frank conversation. I wonder if we get a list of those out. Hey, these people refuse to deal with it. Vote for somebody else.
Yep. And what a lot of people don't realize is state representatives and state senators, you have what's called a local delegation rule. So local delegations control any board, any local authority, and how their rules are set up. Any elected officials fall under our jurisdiction. We decide their elections. We decide their term limits. We decide their powers and their capabilities, unless it's constitutional provision. But again, we pretty much can frame their modus operandi.
Well, this interview is getting a lot more interesting.
Yes, sir. And so your local delegation has a lot of control over your board of education, over your board of commissioners, over any board set up by a state and county. And so I didn't even realize that until a couple months ago, when I was like, hey, what are technically the full parameters? Yeah. And no one's going to tell you that. And so there are.
My next question is, how do we find out who those people are?
Just look up who your state rep and state senator is, and they can definitely talk to you about what you want or what can change in your county. They have a lot of control locally over your local. Technically, the local board of education, board of commissioners serve at the will of the state. So that's a different way of thinking, but that's a technical way of thinking. And so and again, I don't want to have to go down that route of doing these things. It's just simply saying we have clear problems. You're exactly right. We have a bullying and disciplinary issue. We have clearly a funding issue if you're increasing taxes 30% in 1 year. We are almost bankrupt as a local school system because our surplus funds have diminished to only $1 million in a $130 million system.
Wow.
And so we're hitting these budget crunches because we're such a growing county and our infrastructure is being tested because we're not preparing for the future. That's why I ran is like, we have to make these small changes that could hurt the longer we wait. It's like Social Security. The longer you wait, the less you're getting.
That's right.
And the sooner you do, the sooner you can make those small incremental changes, and it affects the whole system as a whole. Because I've sat down with local officials, like, I don't want to be in a declining system. I want to change these problems now so that in 5 years, it's a bell curve. You've come out of the problem.
Right.
And so it's just, but again, going to your point is, anytime you say that, are you questioning how we're doing things? It's like, we have to change some things. I'm not telling you how to completely change your job. I'm just saying, what can we do to move that ball forward? And those conversations are very, very troublesome at times because there's no long-term plan to local, unless you have a really good board of commissioners, a really good board of education. You really don't have those communications of what's our 2-year plan, what's our 5-year plan, what are we looking at, and where do we want our county to go?
Right.
And people deserve that, because especially in these trying times, we could be looking at a recession, we could be looking at budget crunches to where we have no plan. Even on a state level, we have no plan. That's something I want to see is what's our plan if we hit these points, because I don't believe in cutting education funding. But that's the first thing they always go to is, well, cut education funding. That's the one thing that has always been seen to hurt the public long term, is when we cut public education. Yeah. But we have other programs that we could cut, but we don't talk about that because at the last second we have to cut our budget because we never had these conversations beforehand.
Right.
Yeah, they push it off. You mentioned something earlier I want to come back to, and I don't think we developed it out of exactly where it went, but I was in on meetings, and I want to tie a couple of points together here, and they may loosely tie together, or they may tie completely together. The school bus issue, and you talked about funding for that, and I did ask the question because I had through some other programs and just other news articles and stuff. There's definitely been a push in the state of Georgia to partner with the bus companies, which is Bluebird, and maybe, I know it's Bluebird, there may be another one, to go electric where they can on the school buses. And asked the question, they said, absolutely, there's going to be dollars coming back to our county to get some electric buses, and where could we use those? Or some areas are not applicable, and they gave us a lot of good detail about how often they're tested and all the things they do with the buses for the safety and security of that. But have you, from your experience or knowledge of being on the state, being down at the state and everything, do you know, speak on that if you know something about the funding for the school buses, and is it because it seems as though the governor is really pushing to go electric with the school buses. I mean, he seems to be really behind that movement. If you go to their website, that's the first thing that pops up. I mean, I've went and looked myself. Yeah. So what can you tell us about that?
So on school transportation funding, real quick, used to, up until I was elected, the state government was supposed to pay roughly half of school transportation. But over the years, because we just kept it at the same amount of money, it went from 50-50 in 1990 to roughly 10% to 90%, where 90% was local spending. And the state just wasn't paying their share. After a lot of conversations with the appropriations chairman, and chairman was completely for it, we've been able to move that from 10% to 40%. So it's a 40-60 split now. And that's just a full, whatever your locals are spending, 40% we're paying. Now on bus transportation, I know there was a grant last year on providing new buses. It doesn't have to be electrical. So in Tues County, we don't have electrical buses, or in Dalton, I know they go through a busing company to do buses. But in Tues County, we do it all through the school system.
Okay.
When it comes to electric, I still have a lot of issues when it comes to electric subsidies and electric power bus transportation or transportation in general, because it takes a big problem with the power grid. And also they're actually about twice as heavy as regular vehicles. And so it wears down your roads a lot faster, which causes more taxpayer money long term because you're paving your roads twice as fast. And so there's still a lot of kinks to be worked out and I know the governor's big push is electric transportation, but there's still a lot of kinks to be worked out. And I don't think the state's fully prepared to go that full route yet.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point about the grid. And in Georgia, there's also been this move for these data centers, which is really draining on the electric grid. And although we've done a lot of things in Georgia, including having a nuclear plant that came online, that's the first one since like 1970s or something like that, which is good. They don't realize that it's still that system is still very taxed. And these data centers that are really building up around the state are really draining on that electric grid. And we have to be careful, or we won't have the power to be, sustaining for even housing or normal business. I mean, I've saw articles on this, so it is a thing. It's not something I dreamed up.
No, you're exactly right. And there's like everything, there's pros and cons. So data centers, they bring in actually a lot of money to the state too, a lot of state revenue because of their rates of taxation, that they are paying higher rates of electricity. But at the same time, they are very draining to the electrical grid. You're exactly right. So there's this balance, but the problem is we actually have these tax credits that are bringing these data centers to the state. We're the #1 state in data centers right now. And because it's the next big thing to bring all the technology and data centers to Georgia or to your local economy. So I'm not against bringing the data centers to the economy. The problem is those tax credits are so lucrative that's why they're coming in droves. And so we tried to get rid of the tax credit this year, but it was vetoed by the governor. And so you're going to see a continuation, in my opinion, of these data centers really growing in Georgia, which again isn't a complete problem because they are completely paying for themselves. Sure. But again, we sustainable growth is my pitch. And that's where you have to ask these questions of, well, when it comes to power, and there's a lot of problems when it comes to the power side of things. Every time I always love to joke, every time I look under the hood of another problem the state has, it's like, I'm just going to close this and go to the original problem I was dealing with. Well, it just keeps going.
Like, oops, I didn't want to see that.
Just rabbit trail after rabbit trail.
With the tax credits, you would have more income for the state.
Exactly.
And then the state can afford to do more power.
Exactly.
But, and eventually, like you said, sustainability, it's got to be sustainable. Even if you just did away with part of the tax credit.
Yes.
Get that money, start building some more power.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that would make it a little more sustainable.
Exactly. And there's all sorts of ways to balance this equation, but right now
I have I'm a capitalist. I want to see jobs come in, and I'll give the governor credit. He has led the charge, and there's a lot of companies that relocated to Georgia. We also have battery manufacturers that are building up in Georgia. Yeah. There's one of them is kind of slowed right now because of the economy is such a wreck. It kind of slowed down some of that, but they're still intended to build, I believe. But there's massive building that's going on the I-75 corridor. And some of that is not too far from us. In fact, I was in a meeting for my company. They were talking about the challenge to get workers for the next, in the next 5 to 7 years. because of all these companies coming in, there's going to be a real fight to get, good quality workers in your factories.
Yes.
And who all was going to be who was building and what kind of were they going to employ? 500, 1,000, and you add all that up, and there were thousands of workers that were needed. And they're like, look, we're all pulling from the same pool. So there were job training, there were skills training. There's a lot of stuff going on with the local colleges trying to get ready for this, because they're coming. If you haven't drove down, if you go the back way, actually get off 75 and go down 41 highway, you'll see it even more. But there are massive warehouses and different buildings that are being built all up and down. I mean, it got us a Buc-ee's. I mean, we got a Buc-ee's down there because.
No, and you're exactly right. And that's where I would love, because we always used to be, Tues County was always the bedroom community of Chattanooga, where we're right on I-75. We're right south of Chattanooga. We have perfect capability of warehouses, manufacturing, and other things to bring into our community. And so you're exactly right. I'm all for it. The problem comes when we're spending billions of dollars to bring in a certain company.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened on the state level. We spent, that was the one time I voted against the budget. One of the few to ever vote against the budget was because we were spending almost $1 billion to bring in Rivian, when Rivian stock had collapsed 99%. And so, again, the balances of I'm all for sustainable growth. That's where if we had more, that $1 billion for infrastructure, you don't know how many more jobs we could have gotten instead of Rivian. But again, it's just that balance of how are we spending that money and efficiently spending the money. But you're exactly right. It's not challenging. It's just say, how can we spend this money in the best effective way?
Sure. Right. Yeah. It's like when you bring up one thing, it's like you said, it becomes defensive to a whole lot of other things. You're like, hold on, I'm not against what we're doing here. I mean, because we're bringing jobs, or we're making the school better, or we're doing this. But you bring up one issue, and they act as though you're trashing the whole system, and that's not the case. I'm happy to be in Georgia. We've had political issues and problems here. We've briefly touched on that, but as far as the state has a great, a good surplus as far on the state level. They have, we've done a lot of things. There's still a lot of things that needs to happen in the state of Georgia, but there's a lot that's going on in the state. It's something to be proud of for the citizens, but we still have problems, and we've got to work on those problems.
And you're exactly right. Like, something I love to say is, so when I first was elected, I was ready to go fight Atlanta. And so again, we had a whole new leadership change, and now I'm sitting there like, wow, okay. So can we work with these new people? And to be frank, yes, we were able to get a lot of things successfully done the last 2 years that we needed. In the first time in almost 20 years, in the last 2 years, we don't have any new bond debt at all. So I'm the first state representative up here that can actually say I haven't raised a single your debt a single penny. And I take a lot of pride in that. Two is we raised education spending 8% just this year. In Tues County alone, that's almost $5 million more dollars for Tues County. We've again, and $2 billion more dollars in infrastructure. So there are absolutely good. I have a state senator up here who's always going around making sure the state's doing something wrong. He's not wrong, but at the same time, we are doing a lot of very good things too. So You're exactly right. It's this balance. The state is getting a lot of things right, and unfortunately, we're getting some things wrong. And something that is very wrong to me, and going on to this point, is the film tax credits. So film tax credits, just a quick introduction, is almost $1 billion worth of tax credits. Again, out of a $30 billion budget. $1 billion is equivalent to free lunches for every kid in Georgia in the school. That $1 billion is what we spend on film industry that has sustained consistent every year and hasn't really grown in Georgia. And we're spending this money yearly. So that's a huge pot of money that we could be spending towards infrastructure, where we're only spending about $3 billion on infrastructure every year. That's a 33% increase on roads we need. So absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. The state of Georgia is doing wonderful things. I think the state's actually willing to start addressing a lot of the concerns that we've had different than the past. So it's not something we're seeing locally yet, but there's definitely a change of the winds in the state, and I'm excited for it.
Well,
thank you so much for your time today. We've kept you way longer than we intended, and you're easy to talk to, and I appreciate you being willing to talk about anything. And to get to his credit, he said we'll talk about anything. So I appreciate that. we had no rules other than just have a conversation.
No rules.
And,
I'm your representative, so you're allowed to ask me anything.
I like that. You hear about those interviews, and sometimes people get up and walk out, and they say, "We're not talking about this." You said, "We'll talk about anything," and I appreciate that. So, thank you for serving as a person who's elected. Thank you for bringing us the issues and working on those issues and trying to make things better. You'll get to vote for yourself here in a few days. whenever you're going to vote, I don't know if you're early voting or voting on election day. But we hope to catch up with you soon, and maybe right after the election, or maybe election day, or something, or maybe election night, or something. We'll get you back in, and we'll talk about things maybe you want to look at you're going forward. Robert, you got any closing remarks? And also, we're going to give you the last thing to say, Representative Horner. We're going to give you the last remarks, but let me go to Robert real quick and see what he
I just want to say that this was awesome. I know this was like an interview, but it really felt more like front porch talking to me.
It did. It really did.
And that's remarkable to have a state rep that can have that kind of conversation with somebody. And it was fun. I enjoyed this one.
Yes, sir. And anytime this is my job. So I love these discussions. I love policy talk. I'm a policy nerd. I'm more policy than it's social. I don't much care for the social apparatus of the job, but you grow with the job, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we'd have you back anytime.
Absolutely. And please don't hesitate to text, call. I'm right here. And especially during session, I'll let y'all know anytime. I try to communicate with my constituents as much as I can. I'm on the local TV station every week once session starts. That way my constituents know what's going on in the Capitol. They can see my bags under my ass. But I love this job, and I'm very proud to represent you guys. And I thank y'all for having me on.
Well, thank you so much. Well, folks, this is great. And this is part of our news desk we do here at the Southern Fried Podcast. We're getting a lot of interviews. We appreciate that. And we'll have some more, especially during this election season that we're in, Robert, and trying to get some down your way as well, so we can cover more of the state. We'll try to get on the county level, but also the state level as well, and see how many we can get on and just talk about issues. I think that makes us better when we can do that. So we appreciate you.
Well, y'all, we thank you for watching, and Mr. Horner, I really, really enjoyed it.
Wonderful.
We'll sign this thing off, and we'll let you get back to work.
Sounds good.
Taking care of them kids.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, stay with us just real quick. Representative Horner, we'll close the program out. We'll have a couple closing remarks off air, and we thank you so much. Robert, take us out.
Well, once again, it's time, my friends, for another meet and greet. We're Southern Fried and nationwide, so hang on to your seat. Look around, here's what I found. I guess you'll never know what you'll see on the Southern Fried Podcast Show.